Adrian Van Zalten, and this is the Tidbits in Time Almanac for December 2021. December 1st, 1969. The first lottery since World War II was held to draft young men during the Vietnam War. My own number was 227, and they only took men with numbers up to 195, so I would not have been drafted that year. But that never came to pass anyway, because on June 28, 1965, I had taken the oath of office along with some 1,058 skinny young former high school hot dogs at the U.S. Air Force Academy. Many, 35% plus, of my former classmates washed out, resulting in 683 of us graduating on June 4th, 1969. December 2nd, 1942. Alfred Burt began carrying on a family tradition of sending an original Christmas carol to friends and to the parishioners of his father. Which is your favorite of the 15 Burt carols? And what is your favorite Christmas song? December 3rd, 1842. Charles Alfred Pillsbury was born in Warner, New Hampshire. In 1869, he took over the operation of the Minneapolis Company in competition against 4 other mills using large burr stones to grind wheat into flour. Pillsbury introduced a series of carefully gauged steel rolls which were faster and ground harder wheat into finer powder, causing despair in his every rival. December 4th, 1956. Johnny Cash went to Sun Records in Memphis, Tennessee to hear Carl Perkins record. The owner, Sam Phillips, had brought in Jerry Lee Lewis, then totally unknown, to accompany on the piano. Later, Elvis Presley dropped by for a visit. None of this was planned, but naturally a jam session ensued. You and I would have loved to have been there to watch and listen. December 5th, 1886. Rose Wilder Lane was born in DeMette, Dakota Territory. After considerable success in her career as a reporter and novelist and ghostwriter, her mother, Laura Ingalls Wilder, approached her for help with a rough draft of what became the Little House on the Prairie series, which became wildly successful. Rose Wilder Lane was one of the founders of the libertarian movement. December 6, 1912. The bust of Nefertiti was discovered by a team led by a German archaeologist at an archaeological site in Amarna, Egypt. The great royal wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten, she became one of the most famous women of the ancient world and an icon of beauty. The bust is attributed to the work of sculptor Thutmose from around 1345 BC. It's made of stucco and limestone, standing at 19 inches high and weighing 44 pounds. The face is completely symmetrical and almost intact, but the left eye lacks the inlay present in the right. The pupil of the right eye is of inserted quartz with black paint and affixed with beeswax. The background of the eye socket is unadorned limestone. Nefertiti wears her characteristic blue crown with a golden diadem band looped around like horizontal ribbons and joining at the back, and a cobra, which is now broken, over her brow. She also wears a broad collar with a floral pattern. The ears have suffered some damage. After moving around different locations in Germany, the bust is currently on display at the Neues Museum in Berlin, Germany. December 7th, 2020. Iran attacked a U.S. base in Iraq with about a dozen missiles. The missiles were in the air for only about 6 minutes. However, newly developed Space Force detected them in time that all U.S. soldiers were able to get to bunkers before the missiles hit. The barrage damaged runways, tents, and a helicopter. There were no deaths, but 110 people were wounded. The early warning system was the space-based infrared system, a constellation of satellites that surveilled the Earth 24/7, 365 to detect missiles. Without that system, casualties would have been much higher. December 8, 1991. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR, finally gave up on its failed social experiment and dissolved, disintegrated, imploded. Today, the only people still holding to a belief in the discredited Marxist view of economics are tenured professors and students in American colleges. Their intellectual cousins, the socialists, proliferate. December 9th, 1965. CBS aired the first Charlie Brown Christmas special. The cartoonist had to fight the producers to include the ending he wanted, with Linus reciting a Bible story as the true meaning of Christmas. Linus reads a written account from one of the oldest manuscripts known to humankind about an event that happened a couple of millennia ago. You're familiar with the story about a child born in a miraculous manner in Bethlehem. His birth was heralded by angels, and his family had to flee with the newborn to Egypt to escape death at the hand of an evil ruler. It's an exciting story, and each of us has to decide for ourselves, is it true? Did those things really happen? Is there adequate evidence? Is this an actual historical fact? Did these events take place in time and space? Evidence demands a verdict. December 10th, 1915. The Ford Motor Company manufactured its 1 millionth Model T. Henry Ford said of his conception of this vehicle, "I will build a car for the great multitude. It will be large enough for the family, but small enough for the individual to run and care for. It will be constructed of the best materials, by the best men to be hired, after the simplest designs that modern engineering can devise. But it will be so low in price that no man making a good salary will not be able to own one, and enjoy with his family the blessings of hours of pleasure in God's great open spaces." December 11th, 2021. The Army-Navy football game is held in the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. This is always the last regular season college football game of the year. Bennett and Vivian Levin were overwhelmed with sadness while listening to radio reports of injured American troops. So they organized a trip to bring soldiers from Walter Reed Medical Center and Bethesda Naval Hospital to the annual Army-Navy football game in Philadelphia in 2005. They have continued that tradition every year since. Because the Levins are millionaires, they have their own train line with real trains, including 3 luxury rail cars. Think mahogany paneling, plush seating, and white linen dining cars. They have since prevailed on some of their other millionaire train people with luxury cars to join them, now up to 15 additional luxury cars. No press on the trip, lest the soldiers' day of pampering devolve into a media circus. Also, no politicians nor Pentagon suits on board. December 12th, 1944. At a key time during World War II in Europe, D-Day was over, but in mid-December, the Germans began an unexpected assault, resulting in the 6-week-long Battle of the Bulge. Extended bad weather, with days of fog, snow, and torrential rain, grounded the Army Air Corps. The forces of General George Patton were taking the brunt of the attack. Patton contacted his top chaplain, General James O'Neill, and asked for a prayer to change the weather. saying God has his part or margin in everything. That's where prayer comes in. We've got to get not only the chaplains, but every man in the Third Army to pray. We must ask God to stop these rains. December 13, 1944, Chaplain O'Neill responded to Patton's request by writing out a short prayer that was approved and printed and given to each of the 250,000 American soldiers. Almighty and most merciful Father, we humbly beseech thee of thy great goodness to restrain these immoderate rains with which we have had to contend. Grant us fair weather for battle. Graciously hearken to us as soldiers who call upon thee, that armed with thy power we may advance from victory to victory and crush the oppression and wickedness of our enemies and establish thy justice among men and nations. December 14th, 1944. The reverse of the prayer card carried a Christmas greeting from Patton. To each officer and soldier in the 3rd United States Army, I wish a Merry Christmas. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We march in our might to complete victory. May God's blessings rest upon each of you on this Christmas day. These prayer cards were distributed to the troops on December 12th through 14th. In the days before Christmas, the weather cleared, allowing the planes to return to the air and leading to an eventual, hard-fought victory for the Allies. December 15th, 1791. The Bill of Rights was adopted. The Anti-Federalists, among them Richard Henry Lee, Eldridge Gerry, George Mason, Patrick Henry, and Samuel Adams, were strident advocates for the inclusion of what came to be the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. They were apprehensive about the extraordinary powers that were to be granted to the federal government by a document that lacked a clear and unequivocal declaration of certain individual freedoms or personal rights. December 16th, 1773. Some 8,000 colonials, dressed as Mohawk or other Indians, tipped some 90,000 pounds of tea into Boston Harbor in protest of the Tea Act. This defiance triggered the British passage of laws, which came to be known as the Intolerable Acts, which further prompted the colonies to continue on the road to independence. In the Disney movie Mary Poppins, when George Banks, played by David Tomlinson, is being fired from his job for causing the first bank run since the Boston Tea Party, he comments that throwing the tea into the harbor made it unsuitable for drinking, even for Americans. December 17th, 1929. William Louis Safire was born in New York City. He was an author, a journalist, and a speechwriter. I remember him best for his weekly column about English words and phrases, earning himself the nickname of the language maven. He wrote 1,300 installments, and I learned from him some important lessons. As just some examples, less, fewer, over, more, that, and who became words that were important to me. So 10 items or less should be 10 items or fewer. Over 10 years should be more than 10 years. A person that did something should be a person who did something. The way I render some phrases is now subtly different due to the influence of William Safire. Thanks for the tips. December 18th, 1912, was the discovery of the Piltdown Man, which was a fake. One of the problems with the hypothesis of evolution is the failure of paleontologists to find transitional forms, that is, missing links. The scientific community of the day was excited about the finding of the Piltdown Man, but it took them some 40-plus years to discover it was a fraud. So if scientists today are overly enthusiastic about new data on some topic that may amount to jumping to conclusions, look at the news reports with a healthy dose of skepticism. December 19th, 1868. Eleanor Emily Hodgman Porter was born in Littleton, New Hampshire. She is best known as the author of Pollyanna in 1913, about a young orphan girl who suffers tremendous adversity but remains optimistic. As successful as the book was, the 1960 Disney movie with Haley Mills, Jane Wyman, and Carl Malden did not do well financially, despite many fans who remember it now, years later, as their favorite. I liked it. December 20th, 1930. Andrew Gerald Jerry Percino was born in Fresno, California. He was the grandson of Italian immigrants who came to the U.S. to pursue agriculture. He went to college on a ROTC scholarship and became an Air Force officer who flew single-engine jet fighters. He later got into representing performance artists, mainly bands, actors, and sports stars. He was very good at it, building Univision into a Fortune 500 company. He bought the television Jed Clampett mansion and lived there after extensive remodeling. He was well known as a generous philanthropist. December 21st, 2021. In the Northern Hemisphere, today is the winter solstice. It's the shortest day of the year and the longest night. It's officially the first day of winter and one of the oldest known holidays in human history. Anthropologists believe that solstice celebrations go back at least 6,000 years before humans even began farming on a large scale. Many of the most ancient stone structures made by human beings were designed to pinpoint the precise date of the solstice. The stone circles of Stonehenge arranged to receive the first rays of the midwinter sun. Ancient peoples believed that because daylight was waning, it might go away forever, so they lit huge bonfires to tempt the sun to come back. The tradition of decorating our houses and our trees with lights at this time of year is passed down from those ancient bonfires. December 22nd, 1944. The German army in the Bastogne woods of Belgium demanded that American troops surrender. General Anthony McAuliffe replied with a one-word message: nuts. It rhymes with guts, which is about all the Americans had at the time. They were hemmed in during the Battle of the Bulge, and it looked hopeless. The D-Day invasion was successful in June, but Operation Market Garden, with its objective to sweep through Holland and Belgium, was a disaster. The further the Allies tried to push toward Germany, the more difficult it became, the deeper the snow got, and the colder the overnight temperatures dropped. Not until after General George Patton was given free rein did prospects start to improve. Tanks from the army Patton had assembled swept toward Germany, using tactics the Nazis found unstoppable. December 23rd, 1913. The Federal Reserve came into existence. Congress established three monetary policies. Number one, maximizing employment. Number two, stabilizing prices. And number three, moderating long-term interest rates. The Fed has been in business for more than 100 years now, and it has failed miserably on all three criteria. Inflation has reduced the purchasing power of the dollar by 2,693.8% since 1913. Employment has skyrocketed during its term, most notably during the Great Depression when almost nobody could find a job. Interest rates have jumped all over the place, and the Fed has bought out the whole of professional economists. Plus, insider trading by Fed employees has run amok. December 24th, 2021. The witch had troubled Narnia for 100 years. It was always snowy and cold, but Christmas never came. Then, at the imminent return of Aslan, the children encountered Father Christmas. December 25th, 0 AD. The three wise men, wizards, magi, gifted the babe born in a manger in Bethlehem with gold, frankincense, and myrrh, which were very costly gifts. Frankincense comes from a family of trees, a milky resin extracted from the bark. Myrrh is from trees in the same family, though specifically from the resin of a different tree bark, and is reddish in color. These are some of the most highly prized commodities in ancient civilization and still very expensive today. Gold, of course, you already know about. December 26, 2021. Boxing Day in Great Britain and the Commonwealth, and the Feast of Stephen in the Roman Catholic tradition. It is also Good King Wenceslas Day in the Czech Republic. One 12th century preacher described him as, "His deeds I think you know better than I could tell you. For as is read in accounts of history, no one doubts, rising every night from his noble bed, and with only one chamberlain a page, he went around to God's churches and gave alms generously to widows, orphans, those in prison, and who had been afflicted by every difficulty." December 27th, 1945. The International Money Fund, the IMF, was formed after the Bretton Woods Agreement. It was designed to stabilize world currencies after World War II. But it was just a mindless bureaucracy, which never functioned well. Most recently, the IMF botched the currency crisis in Greece, destabilizing the euro, which was an IMF-designed currency foisted on Europeans in the 1990s. The new world order is falling apart. Brexit is an early sign. The failure of the IMF to prop up the euro will soon be manifest. December 28, 1732. The first known ad for Poor Richard's Almanac was published in the Pennsylvania Gazette. The Almanac included weather reports, eclipses, tides, and tables of English kings. But what made it famous were the witty proverbs about life that Benjamin Franklin included as filler, such as, "Well done is better than well said," and "haste makes waste." Benjamin Franklin may have gotten inspiration when he was 15 years old while he worked in the print shop of his brother. He would sneak into work at night and leave letters to the editor signed Silence Dogood. The letters became very popular, but when young Franklin told his brother James that he was the one who was writing them, the two came to blows, and Ben ran away to Philadelphia. When Benjamin Franklin started Poor Richard's Almanac, his brother was publishing an almanac also of his own called Poor Robin's Almanac. December 29th, 1891. Businessman Joyce Clyde J.C. Hall was born in David City, Nebraska. In 1910, he and his brothers moved to Kansas City with shoeboxes full of picture postcards and began selling them to dealers around the Midwest. He started manufacturing his own cards and founded the Hallmark Card Company, which is now the largest greeting card company in the world. Despite its size, it is still privately owned. December 30th, 2021. I was working at my first job during the Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, and Jimmy Carter years. In those days, we were smothered by runaway inflation. I didn't like it then, and I don't like it now, but I'm concerned that it may get a lot worse before it gets better. So I think this is a good time to deck the halls with revisiting the macro follies. December 31st, 1862. An enabling act was approved by President Abraham Lincoln, admitting West Virginia as a state. Such action was illegal and unconstitutional. But during the war between the states, the president operated on the justification that anything goes. In several cases, particularly the 1870 case of Virginia versus West Virginia, 78 U.S. 39, the U.S. Supreme Court ignored Article 4, Section 3, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution, which specifically prohibits that a new state be formed within the jurisdiction of any other state. Even though in reality, West Virginia is a fake state, it's treated as if it's legitimate. And now, after more than a century and a half, it will probably not be challenged further. This has been the Tidbits in Time Almanac for December 2021. If you would like your own printed copy sent to you in email, then just let me know at adrian@tidbitsintime.com.